the prophets of a brave new world, captains of industry, have visions grand and great designs, but none have room for me. They see a world where everyone is rich and smart and young, but if I live to see such things, too late for me they come.
In recent months, more than 1 million people, most of them young, have protested against a new economic order called globalization. This represents one of the greatest popular movements since the 1960s. Surely never before has the human race enjoyed such amazing capacity to create wealth and reduce poverty. Yet never before has the gulf between rich and poor been so vast and inequality so widespread. The facts of globalization are revealing. A small group of powerful individuals are now richer than most of the population of Africa. Just 200 giant corporations dominate a quarter of the world's economic activity. General Motors is now bigger than Denmark. Ford is bigger than South Africa. Unseen by shoppers in the high street, the famous brands of almost everything from running shoes to baby clothes are now made in very poor countries with cheap labor, at times bordering on a form of slave labor. Tiger Woods, the golfer, is paid more money to promote Nike than most of the entire workforce actually making Nike products here in Indonesia. Is this the global village we are told is our future? Or is it merely an old project that used to be run by the divine right of kings and is now run by the divine right of multinational corporations and by the financial institutions and governments that back them? This film is about these new rulers of the world, and especially their impact on one country, Indonesia. Indonesia is where the old imperialism meets the new. This is a country that should not be poor. It's rich in almost everything. Mountains of copper and gold, oil, timber, and the skills and labor of its people. Colonized by the Dutch in the 16th century, Indonesia was plundered by the West for hundreds of years, a debt that is yet to be paid back.
Ratusan tahun lamanya Indonesia itu dihisap oleh negara-negara utara. Bukan hanya Indonesia, semua negara-negara kulit berwarna. Sehingga Barat menjadi kuat, menjadi makmur, menguasai keuangan dan perdagangan sampai sekarang. Nah, sekarang didikte oleh IMF, oleh Bank Dunia. Negeri yang begini kaya diubah menjadi negara pengemis sekarang, Indonesia. Karena tidak adanya karakter pada elit.
Globalization is used by its champions to suggest a coming together of people of all races, of all countries, and it will relieve poverty, it will distribute wealth. What we're actually seeing is precisely the opposite processes in train, that the poor are becoming markedly poorer, while the very wealthy are becoming staggeringly wealthy.
And here are some of the staggeringly wealthy. This is a wedding in Jakarta of the Indonesian elite. Two merchant families are being united. 4 years ago, the World Bank called Indonesia a dynamic economic success, a model pupil of the global economy. Among the Versace dresses and diamonds are those who've reaped the benefits of the new global freedoms. Freedom to watch money make more money. In this respect, they could be any nationality. Outside this wedding, there's another world. In Indonesia, as many as 70 million people live in extreme poverty. We calculate that it would take an Indonesian worker, like one of the waiters serving here, 400 years to pay for this wedding reception. Less than 5 miles away is the backyard of the global economy, the site of the dynamic success you don't see. This is a labour camp that's home to workers who make the clothes we buy in the high streets and shopping malls. This is the human price paid for our fashionable trainers, our smart shirts, our jeans with a tag that says, "Made in Indonesia." Young people living here who make the famous brands are paid on average the equivalent of 72 pence a day, about $1. That's the legal minimum wage in Indonesia. According to the Indonesian government, it's just over half a living wage. The dormitories are made from breeze blocks and packing cases. When it rains, they flood. There are open sewers and no clean running water. Many of the children are undernourished and prey to disease. While I was filming here, I caught dengue fever, carried by the mosquitoes which infest these slums. It kills children. The conditions here are not very different from workers' camps in other parts of Asia, in Africa and Latin America, where the famous brands are also made cheaply for lucrative Western markets. And this is where they work, in what is called an economic processing zone, which means a vast area of sweatshops. The factories may look modern, but once you step inside, you feel the claustrophobia of the workers, the sheer frenzy of their production, and you see their fatigue.
John Pilger.
Posing as fashion buyers, we film secretly in this factory. The factories are owned by Taiwanese and Korean contractors who employ cheap labor to make the products of famous brands such as Nike, Reebok and Adidas. We looked at one famous brand, Gap. The working conditions we found are by no means the worst.
So you do Gap, of course. You do lots of Gap. And I mean the quality control of Gap, I think, is excellent.
In the future,
We found more than 1,000 mostly young women working crowded together under the glare of strip lighting in temperatures that can reach 40 degrees centigrade. The only air conditioning is upstairs where the bosses are. Working hours can vary and can be increased dramatically when an urgent export order has to be met. We surveyed 5 factories regarded as typical, and I interviewed workers from all over Jakarta.
You work a 24-hour shift with just a couple of breaks, and then 2 hours later you start another shift. So in effect you work a 36-hour shift.
Saya kerja long shift tuh dari jam 7.30 sampai pagi lagi 7.30, pas terakhirnya sore jam 18.30.
Are you given any choice?
Nggak bisa.
What would happen if you refused to do this 24-hour shift?
Ya mungkin ada hukuman, tapi belum pernah menolak sih. Jadi takut aja.
On these long 24-hour shifts, do you recall what labels you were packing?
Kebanyakan Gap sama Olive.
Do any of the people from the Gap company ever visit your factory?
Sering.
Do they ever ask you about or investigate the working conditions, your working conditions?
Dulu pernah ada, tapi di personal itu anaknya tuh udah dikontak duluan gitu, udah nggak boleh ngomong yang salah gitu. Harus sesuai omongan dari personalia.
What did they tell you to say?
Ya misalkan nggak bilang lembur longsip, terus pokoknya tidak boleh membuka rahasia perusahaan, tidak boleh menjelek-jelekan perusahaan.
This is what the Gap company calls a code of conduct. In response to criticism, famous global brands like Gap have come up with these codes. They say the idea is to set standards and protect workers, but how effectively is it enforced?
You have to come to Indonesia to really realize what codes of conduct means, and that it is almost useless to exercise or to implement code of conduct here in this country, because this government is always campaigning cheap labor here in Indonesia to attract the foreign investment, and codes of conduct cannot do anything about that. And because Indonesian workers is already very poor, and the rate of unemployment here is very, very high, so that people will work whatever kind of work they have, or how much they paid, they will still work.
The Gap company stipulates a maximum working week of 60 hours. It says workers may refuse overtime without any threat of penalty.
Are there people who do extraordinary shifts, like much more than 12 hours, even up to 24 hours?
Ada kemarin QC juga ya, finishing itu dari jam 8 sampai jam 12 malam. Sampai jam 12 malam karena dengan alasan ini mesti diekspor. Kondisi mereka berdiri dari jam 8 sampai jam 12 itu berdiri, nggak ada duduk.
16 hours standing.
Iya.
Is that common?
Kalau ekspor yang ini, ekspor harus selesai targetannya tanggal sekian, mesti.
Is the Gap Code of Conduct displayed in the factory?
Pasang sama sekali, bahkan peraturan perusahaan pun tidak ada yang dipasang di tingkatan pabrik.
Nggak ada. Nggak usah kode etik. Peraturan di dalam perusahaan itu nggak pernah dilihatin dengan kami, apalagi kode etik dari suatu barang.
These boxer shorts were made in one of the factories we investigated.